After.
Welcome back. This is our now fourth episode or so.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you guys. Tonight, we're going to go over our tight end positioning. There are many opinions on tight end positioning, not just in this group, but in every group. So what we're doing tonight is we're going to talk about the top 15 mentioned tight ends per most lists that are out there for recommendations. And we're going to either agree, disagree, or interject, maybe place someone above them, below them, whatever. We'll find what we think will work out best in a lot of leagues for this situation. So,
or just hate tight ends entirely.
Yeah, right? Or that too. Or ban them and add a second flex, which is another debate. Right? Yeah. So without much ado, we're going to get it over to both Ray and Derek tonight. We're going to really go over the top. Let's start with the top 5. See what you guys think.
Okay. I think everyone, we didn't want to go off of a specific list because of marketing reasons, or brand reasons. Everyone is going to have Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce as your 1 and 2. You know, who's 1 and who's 2 is going to depend on the person. I think statistically, Mark Andrews had higher numbers over Kelce. I've said it multiple times. I said it before I met you, Jim. We both have agreed upon it every time it's been said. Travis Kelce's not a fucking tight end. He shouldn't even be on this list. You have to block to be a tight end. If you just run routes, you are a wide receiver that is slotted as a tight end. Mark Andrews is kind of in that same boat. But for fantasy-wise, if you can get Mark Andrews or Kelce without sacrificing a more important pick, obviously that's going to be your go-tos. Because you talk shit about Mark Andrews, but he's been consistent for multiple seasons.
I'm not an Andrews fan.
You don't understand
I don't trust his quarterback.
You don't, but Mark Andrews delivers. It's just he's not as consistent.
He's got great hands. He's got great hands. But okay, so when you said it, all right, so Ray, get this. An astounding number of percentage of leagues last year, Kelce went number 1 overall in drafts. Not just positions, overall, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you refute that? Do you support that? Or do you talk about strictly points wise, right? Is that something you're like, that makes sense? Would you do that?
Of course it makes sense. He's a wide receiver. You're getting a free receiver. Where everyone else, because of how the draft typically goes, they have dudes that are 15th overall, 17th overall, just because of the way the draft goes, and they're having to start him that week because of opponent matchups and shit like that. And that dude's gonna get 3 looks and 2 grabs, and in your tight end slot, you have another wide receiver who is or was the WR2 for his quarterback, and is now WR1 now that Hill is no longer in Kansas City. So Derek, more than ever, he's not a tight end.
Right. So Derek, if we take Kelce and Andrews, and we, if you have anything else to add to that, go for it. Who are you picking next? But guarded, you can't get those 2 guys.
Well, honestly, I agree with the fact that Kelce turns into Mahomes' WR1 with the loss of Tyreek Hill.
Sure.
Without a doubt, his draft stock has drastically gone up as a tight end, getting that free wide receiver, as you say. But honestly, if I can't get Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, I'm going to have a toss-up between Kyle Pitts and George Kittle. Pitts, even with the scoring 1 touchdown, dude got crazy amount of yards as a tight end. He's going to hit the sophomore season where he gets a groove. With the loss of Calvin Ridley, he's going to be just like Kelce, getting more targets. I don't have the numbers on me, but Kittle. I think he's second to Kelce in just the way that the persona that he is for his team and for the 49ers, even with Debo and Ayuk, he's just another receiver pretty much and just a target favorite.
So I'm a Kittle guy. I've had him a couple of times. My other thing to add to that, Derek, is that you'll find that when he's not doing that, the Niners run so much that a tight end isn't really a position other than another blocker. And whether that's Kittle or the backup is another thing, right? But they run the ball a ton. And so while sometimes that can open up a game for guys to get away and get behind coverage and whatnot, your bet is that he gets maybe 2 to 3 looks that breaks it down the field. Otherwise, you're going to have a very average outing from him, right? I mean, I've gone from 44 points in a PPR standard league to 2.3 catch, 2.3 points, right? So I'm with you on that one too. For me, I honestly think the four guys behind Kelsey and Andrews kind of are slightly interchangeable, and I say that because Kittle hasn't been healthy for a full season in a while. Darren Waller hasn't been healthy for a full season in a while. Dalton Schultz, the Cowboys' offense is really difficult to grab a pass catcher and say with confidence he's going to be the guy this week.
None of them have high percentages.
Exactly, right? And then Pitts, the reason why Pitts is still in that group for me, although he's healthier and he's much more of a physical specimen than people really understand, it's basically like a giant receiver, like Calvin Johnson back in the day. It's really what it's like. You still have a brand new quarterback and a rookie quarterback behind that. You still have no clear number two behind Pitts. You've got Russell Gage, who's my, an LSU guy. I love the guy. He's been in Atlanta a couple of years, but hasn't really blossomed. And maybe that's because Calvin Ridley or Matt Ryan or whatever you want to say happened, right? But there's still no identifiable number two to me that takes pressure off of Pitts. So if I just double Pitts, I don't know what you're going to do if you're Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, I think the first two are pretty clear. The next four or so are the ones that I start getting a little bit dicier. I also say, too, I think Kittle falls down the list for me until I know for sure who's throwing the ball for them. Because if it's Trey Lance, he falls down a lot to me. Not even close.
Sure.
Jimmy G
I don't
used
get
his
how
titles.
y'all hate. I don't get how
It's
y'all
not
hate
a
Trey
hate.
Lance.
It's a lack
It's not
of
a hate.
experience.
It's a fact.
Jimmy G has an established relationship with Kittle.
Yep.
That relationship does not exist between him and
I'll tell you
Lance.
what, Derek. Give me why Trey Lance is good for Kittle and good for fantasy on your team because of that.
I don't know if I can put it in perspective for fantasy. I follow up with Trey Lance and the aspect of what he does on the field and training, and it's just the reports are astounding in comparison to Garoppolo.
Right.
Just the fact that Lance can throw the ball a million times better than Jimmy G ever can.
Well, he's also been out for
that's
surgery.
true. Yeah.
Right.
So if that's true, I would expect Trey Lance to come on the field and be able to lead that team in the direction that all 49ers fans are expecting him to do.
Yeah, I think his mobility is certainly a credit. Absolutely. What I didn't like when I saw last year is you have playmakers pretty much surrounding him from running backs, even if it's like, well, they don't have an all-star running back. No, but they have three guys who can run the ball very well, right? Most of them can catch the pass. I'm not asking them to be a hero in this case, right? But what I think is a bigger part of that is when he was on the field, it turned the offense into an option-esque RPO-style offense, which is what he was in college without a big can. Basically like a more mobile version of probably like a Josh Allen-esque, but with less throwing, a lot less throwing, right? I don't like how the attempts and interceptions to touchdown ratio worked out. Now, is that because he didn't have enough experience starting? That could be said. Probably true, right? Would he have done different in the playoffs had he been out there and not Jimmy G? Who's to say, right? But when you look at some of the throws, I don't like the way a high interception rate was over the touchdown rate. I don't like how one of his touchdowns was Deebo Samuel's on a completely busted throw. Had Deebo stop, turn around, wait for the ball, turn and go. It's not encouraging to me to see that. But of course, like everyone needs an off season, and I'm not going to dog on a guy who's been with the team and didn't start that first year, right? But I get what you're saying. I like the mobility and I like the dynamic it brings in. I just don't know. I don't know if that makes Debo the guy, Kittle the guy, Ayuk the guy. For some reason, Ayuk dropped off the cliff last year. 2 years ago was an all-star, and then last year just disappeared.
I don't think he had a full healthy season last season.
So there was debate that Shanahan didn't like certain attitudes and certain things that he done in practice, and therefore gave him less opportunities. And he wasn't really injured a lot, so there seems to be a little validity behind those reports, but I'm not exactly sure how that all went down.
So that's a really good point of what I was going to bring up with those next four. after Kelsey and Andrews is all four of them belong to organizations that are like they're in like a zone of like unassuredness. Like they're not really, they've got a lot of like things up in the air with them. So it's tough to see where shit's gonna land at the start of season.
Yeah.
They all have organizational unrest, I guess.
Yeah, influx, right? Influx. So after we get to the first 5 or 6 or so, I guess what I would say is, like, if I'm a guy and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, who are you staffing? Not even just confidently, but if you had to pick the next couple of groups of guys, right? Who would you say? Yeah, I'm gonna play him. I'm not going to rely on this guy to deliver, but I will play him. Who's something like in that ballpark?
I think my two guys is going to be Jaceki.
I like that.
Having hopes that he steps his game up from last year, works on his hands a little bit. There's such confidence in Miami right now with the addition of Tyreek Hill and that super fast offense that maybe the whole team will hit the ground running. And I'm also going to say Gronkowski, as long as he re-signs with Tampa Bay.
I get that.
Without a doubt, that's Tom Brady's number one dude. Brady's going to put the ball in his hands. I mean, Gronk's the kind of dude, you get down in the end zone, throw the ball up, and he's going to catch it. So
yeah.
I think Gronk almost led in touchdowns last year, didn't he, for tight ends?
It's pretty close.
So I would be surprised if anything was different, considering Brady is on camera, admitted to forcing the ball to him. So,
that's exactly why I'm taking Gronk every year.
Yeah, you have a quarterback guaranteed that he's going to get targets. So
yeah, I'm just waiting for you. I'm waiting for you to talk about your boy. I'm giving you that window. Do it. You got it.
All right. Outside of fantasy, Dawson Knox is one of the top tight ends in the league. Everyone, you can pretend otherwise, but the numbers are there. He does his fucking job. He blocks. He opens up rushing routes, and his receiving numbers are still on par with other receivers in the league. The last 2 games, he dedicated, not him just by himself, he just decided to do it, but the team used him and dedicated him to blocking specifically for Josh Allen and Singletary to run rushing routes so that they could basically demonstrate their ability to rush. And even with those 2 games solely being dedicated to rush blocking, he still was on par with his other receivers. So he sat 2 games out, basically, was not running routes for receptions, and still was able to maintain on par numbers with Emmanuel Sanders and Colby.
Was that after the broken hand?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
He had a absolutely solid. I think he's 6th overall in one of the lists I was looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's up there.
He moves up and down because some games he blocks more than he gets targets, or if Josh Allen is into a shootout, who knows who's getting the fucking ball?
Yeah.
But whoever's open, it's not always going to be
pass catchers is the answer.
Yeah, it's just whichever, it's going to be whoever's open, which hurts receivers in Buffalo, including Dawson Knox. So personally, I love Dawson Knox, but he's not. I don't see him. It is 100% possible in my mind that he could not repeat last season's numbers and he could fall off, just because of the way that team works, the way Buffalo works. Their environment there is that no player comes first, so they don't force to any single player, with the exception of Stephon Diggs, but he's their number 1 player, after Josh Allen. So obviously, those 2 players are gonna have top numbers.
I'm gonna add to your guys' argument 2 things that I like that improve his odds for me, or just his overall look. I like that Emmanuel Sanders retired. He's a good dude, good receiver for years, awesome guy. And I like that Cole Beasley's not there, because Dawson Knox now becomes that clutch pass catcher. Oh my God, pass catcher, right? You saw it demonstrated last year where the guy's deep behind coverage because no one thought he'd be running out for passes. That's a big part of Dawson Knox's game. He's far faster than you think because in college, he never played tight end, right? This is not a guy. This is a position player who said, "I'll play wherever you need me," and it happened to fall in the tight end position for the Bills, which is one of my favorite things that players do. is that they fall where they're supposed to fall in the sense of like, hey man, your talent's here. You should try this. And he did, and it worked out. I think Dawson Knox creeps into the top 8 at least for me. Certainly because I definitely trust the pass thrower in Buffalo. I don't have any doubts of flux. I know the Oko's gone. I got you. I don't know how much of that was Dable or Dorsey, in the background with just Dorsey and Allen making those decisions. I like to think that the plays that ended up benefiting Buffalo the most were busted plays that Josh Allen found someone to get the ball to. And that seems how a lot of his big plays come, which is perfect for fantasy because that's those big 16-point plays on a single throw.
Dawson Knox has saved a few of my games last season with Josh Allen as my quarterback because he snagged balls out of the air that Allen did not mean to go to him. Just because he's such a massive dude, he can pull balls out of the air. He's not as big as Gronk, obviously, but in a similar sense, like I've seen Gronk steal passes from his teammates because of how big he is. He's just in the fucking way. Dawson Knox like snagged a throwaway ball that Josh Allen meant to dump into the end zone, like out of the end zone, so that he didn't take the sack.
That play.
And he pulled it down. That was in the perfect game against the Patriots last season. I like him a lot, but for fantasy, I'm hesitant. To throw him in there. But because of this shit position and the lack of talent, not lack of talent, the lack of points present in the tight end. There's a lot of talented tight ends. I like the tight end position in real football, but in fantasy football, it is scored poorly. And so, with the exception of the like top 3, I would say my opinion is anyone outside the top 2 is a toss-up, and that is to include players I like Dawson Knox.
Derek,
I agree with that. I was just going to say I agree with the hesitation with Dawson Knox. Like you said, the Bills, they put that ball around. It's like evenly distributed. There's no individual on that team that is single-handedly targeted. Even to back that up, I saw the other day that in the history of the Bills franchise, there's not been a receiver or even including a tight end to have more than, I think it's 11 touchdowns per year, which is the record for the lowest amount of single-season touchdowns per any franchise.
No Tony Gonzalez or Antonio Gates or Shannon Sharps in Buffalo's history, huh? Nothing up there.
No,
they've always had a dense wide receiver core.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they passed the ball around way too much. Just for, I'm sure Knox is going to be consistent, but I just don't think that it's going to be consistent enough to put those big points to lack for or to make up for those other receivers, who are going to have a bad week.
I'm going to sweeten the pot a little bit more for you, Derek, to see if that wavers any bit. I'm going to make a small prediction here. I think Gabriel Davis probably isn't going to be as impactful as Buffalo folks think he will be. I think at some point they're just going to put a safety on the top and it's going to go to either Diggs or Knox. And unless James Cook is all of a sudden their solution to running backs, which I hope, that'd be great. Awesome. You have a running back and a pass-heavy offense, I'm always picking that guy up, right? Just shy of that, I think Knox has a breakout season, kind of like Dalton Schultz. I think him and Dalton Schultz are comparable in the sense that, like, he's open. It's not rocket science. We don't need to always hit a 80-yard streak for a fly, which is, Gabriel Davis does a great job at. You don't get 14 or 15 of those a season, which is why he exploded in the playoff game. Right, because they just bottled it up all season. He had a couple, I think he had a couple, but nothing like what he did in that playoff game. And I think the hype is real big on him because he's counterpart.
Well, it came later in the season. The caveat to what you're saying is that he was second to Emmanuel Sanders at the start of the season, and they slowly started to phase Gabriel Davis in as Emmanuel Sanders started having personal issues, and then like played less, injuries and stuff like that. So like it kind of. The reason he was slower in the beginning, whether this means the hype is real or not, I'm not saying, but there's a reason. There's an explanation for why Davis wasn't popping off the whole season. That's because he was sharing the space with another receiver. But then at the end of the season, when he did start popping off, he was not sharing that space as much. We're getting off track. I'm going to defend Dawson Knox a little bit, and because I will most likely end up drafting him because the odds of me getting Mark Andrews or Kittle are very slim
Very
in
slim.
the 10-man league. Dawson Knox is a top 10 tight end. He just is. That's just a fact. So you have if your league has a tight end position, you have to fill it, right? If you're not smart and don't just get rid of it and use it as a second flex or third flex,
Third flex.
you have to have someone in that slot. Otherwise, you're just gonna throw away a whole position. Okay, he might not get you 20 points this week, but he might get you 20 points this week. So if you don't have one of those top two, you might as well have Dawson Knox. Schultz, I would probably put above him. Someone in an offense where they get thrown to more often because their team doesn't spread around as much. But other than that,
there's a very
someone is going to have
reason,
him on their
though.
team.
Yes, there's a very specific reason that Schultz goes way up, and that's because Blake Jarvin isn't there anymore for Dallas. So they had 2 first-rounders in their tight ends, right? And Jarvin got hurt, and Schultz got the start a couple years back. He did great. He got the job. But he's been playing a little bit of two fiddles going on. That's not the case anymore. And that's the only reason why I said Dalton Schultz goes up a little bit. But I still think I compare Knox and Schultz to me probably on the same page right now, I would say. Even though your boy O.J. Howard is out there, I don't know that threatens Knox at all at the time being. But anyway, so I'm waiting, Derek, for you to see if you'll pick up a certain guy since you're a huge fan of a certain team that's made a lot of moves.
Are you expecting Tanyan?
No, I know why Tanyan's not. No, I'm expecting a certain Philadelphia Eagle to fly off the board.
Oh, Goddard. Honestly, that would probably be it'd be probably one of my choices if I couldn't get Kelsey, or if I was just unlucky and stuck with the Dawson Knox per chance. I'd probably make some moves and try to pull Goddard. Honestly, I wasn't even considering Goddard in the tight end position. I kind of liked how we talked about Njoku from Cleveland.
Oh,
it's probably the wrong perspective to go for the big money guys, but I mean that would make me work a little harder. But I think Goddard. I just don't know too much about Goddard. I did not watch the Eagles last year.
They had that whole Ertz and Goddard thing about 6-7 games in, so it was a little bit hard to get a read. And also, Jalen Hurts just wasn't throwing the ball well because he was under assault every other play. So,
yeah,
it's probably why it's a little bit quieter on him.
Yeah, I don't know. With the Eagles, I don't feel like they're going to share the ball around that much. I feel like, it's going to go to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. I feel like they're going to get most of the action down in
and
Philly.
You got Sanders and all those other running backs behind him. So just the list goes on and on. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so oddly enough, I thought Goddard would go a little bit higher, but I'm actually going to pick. I got 2 guys that I wanted to talk about. I really like the situation that Zach Ertz is in. I think he came to Arizona and had immediate impact. I think what he ripped off this first or second game, he had 2 touchdowns in the same game, right? Immediately started producing, and then Arizona fell apart as a team. So you couldn't rely on any Cardinal player. Maybe James Conner.
Unexplainable issues. No, you're right.
You know what I'm saying? Like just shy of that
flew
guy.
Out the window. Yeah.
No,
you couldn't rely on James Conner. Yeah, no.
Well,
the whole
I'm talking about like if you
apart.
had to pick a Cardinal.
What I'm saying is like the entire offense crumbled because suddenly, I really don't know what Murray's issues were. He just started playing terrible.
I think he was more injured,
legitimately
than people.
Bad football.
Yeah.
Well, than he was letting on. Maybe. It was just bad football, though. Like just making not smart decisions, and
defense just didn't produce. You had a lot of top-paying dudes: Chandler Jones, JJ Watt. You just didn't get the production. And then the second guy, just a little past that one, because I know it's so easy to get the whole team involved at this position because it's all relative, right? I'm actually going to go with Freiermuth, and the reason why is because he had a great season for a Steeler tight end last year. And that was an introduction into the Steelerdom kind of hall of playing. The reason I'm also going to pick him too is because when you have a quarterback issue or you have an unstable quarterback situation, your tight end is your first guy that they check down to. So in PPR, and they found it in the red zone a lot. The whole stadium says the moose when he catches the ball or does anything right. So he's a part of the culture. He's involved. Matt Canada's Oko there, who I don't care at all about. He was at LSU. I've yet to see him successfully do anything at the NFL level, and he's still an Oko. But anyway, now you have Trubisky, who's a little more mobile. You have Kenny Pickett, who's more mobile. Now, am I saying that that's the solution? No. But what I'm saying is, in a PPR, if I can get 5 to 6 looks at a tight end, I'll play him. We're not talking about my top guy, right? But I'll play him, right? And then after you talk about like that section of tight ends, I mean, do you guys have anyone that you're passionate about? Anyone that stands out at all?
I mean, I already talked about him, but I think I'm passionate with Gronk. My only problem with Gronk was what was that nobody named dude that they would swap reps with?
Cameron Brate.
Yeah, and Brate would come in there and play just like Gronk.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was almost like, they didn't skip a beat. So, if Gronk doesn't end up playing next season, I think Brate might be a good substitution for my love for Gronk, just because Brady's such a tight end dude.
I just think it's kind of crazy that Brate is nowhere to be found on this list. None. Nowhere to be found.
He didn't have enough start time.
Oh, is that
No,
okay? Yeah, so fair enough. Yeah, so and then you see Gronk, who's not even on a team, who's ranked in the top 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I was talking about that with Jared Cook. Like Jared Cook is a free agent right now.
Yeah.
He's ranked higher.
So Ray, you're not even like going to mess with like a Logan Thomas or anything like that.
No, I hate this position for fantasy. It's terrible.
Is it because you got burned last year on Logan Thomas?
Logan Thomas, that was he played
Washington
for
Cat. Yeah.
Dude.
He'd come in, drop 20 points, and then disappear for 8 weeks, which he's done his entire career. It's been
that was another dude that all I needed was a mediocre game. I never have. Well, I know that if I don't have Kelsey or Andrews or Kittle or someone like that,
or
my tight end
yeah,
position is not going to be a workhorse. So I pick dudes that should be consistent and get me like 10 points every week. That motherfucker came in, got like 2 points, and hurt his leg, and then was out for the whole game.
The second he started limping
week.
to the locker room, Ray was like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
He played like one play.
Yeah, and I saw him limping off. I was like, "Oh." Ray was sitting next to me. I was like, "I'm not looking at him." No.
Right. So even if you hate Carson Wentz, do you think Logan Thomas's draft stock goes up or goes down? Because personally, I think Wentz is a much better quarterback than Heineke.
You're wrong,
but
for sure,
yeah, you need to put your thoughts and feelings aside on Carson Wentz.
My thoughts and feelings on this. Look, I'm a Colts guy through and through. And
Taylor Heineke
my thoughts
was a much more passionate player.
He was a passionate player. But you can't rate really any of Wentz's pass catchers from last year at the tight end position because they had 4 that they would rotate in and out every other play. Because the offense revolved around the run, and they had to be fresh to run for Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. So the tight ends did produce some, for sure. Mo Ali Cox, but because you didn't know who was going to be in the game, you didn't pick a single Colts tight end.
Who was the other tight end for Washington last year? Was it Seals Jones?
Seals Jones, yes. Not Peoples, excuse me. Seals Jones, yes. Yeah, he did fine for a team that really, and actually, now that you bring that up, Derek, I know no one thinks this, but I think you have so many skilled position players in Washington that Wentz just has to do okay, and this team is already more lethal.
I agree.
McKissick going back, yeah.
I mean, I agree 100%. I don't say it just to piss Ray off, but I think Wentz is a decent quarterback.
I do too.
He isn't, objectively.
It's okay. Maybe one day he'll have enough rings, or maybe one day Josh Allen will have as many rings as Carson Wentz.
See, that's why I know that I'm right, because you keep trying to pretend that Wentz is anywhere near Josh Allen's level or ever was. You're delusional.
All right. So I got a question for you, Derek, because you're a little more familiar with that side of the league. Do you pick up Russell Wilson's tight end, the youngster who had a decent season, but Bridgewater is not a dude that I would trust. His name's Albert Okwuegbunam.
Is he in Denver? Or are you
Excuse
talking
me.
about his tight end that was in Seattle?
No, he's tight end in Denver.
Yeah, Denver.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could tell me a little better. Is he more of a blocking tight end, or was he one to couch routes?
He's almost just like Fant in playing style.
Okay.
So athletic, can block, and he's the undisputed TE1. There's no guy who's going to rotate in and out for a better play.
Fant's gone, and Fant was the only one that was.
Yeah, Fant disappears off this list, even though he's in the top 15. Because in Seattle, you lost your mind if I'm ever going to trust Drew Lock in them. You lost your mind. But do you pick up a guy with a new quarterback, fresh arms, fresh everything, right? Or do you take a look at maybe Tyler Higbee back at the Rams, right? Which was a kind of a whirlwind off season because he wasn't. But in case, would you play a Stafford tight end? Would you play a Russell Wilson tight end kind of character out there?
I'd probably take a Russell Wilson tight end over like a Higbee just because the Rams aren't a throw to a tight end kind of team. They're just straight receiver.
Yeah.
Having somebody like Russell Wilson in the throwing the ball, I feel like you're almost a little bit more safe picking a Denver tight end. Honestly, it's going to take a couple games to tell, but I think you're safe going with a tight end with Russell Wilson.
I agree. And in the spirit of tight ends moving around to different teams, Ray, I think you had this guy a couple of games. I don't think he played often for you, but Austin Hooper goes from Cleveland to Tennessee.
Sure.
Do you remember the tight end? Yeah, he was their pass catching tight end for sure. And he's a big body. Mm-hmm. He's good at what he does. Do you even consider a dude like that if your top, let's say top guys are just absolutely not, or let's say injuries take out your top dude, right? Is that a guy you'll hold on to play and just wait for your guy to come back?
Not in Atlanta. No. I still don't care for the quarterback situation. Sorry, I meant
You're
Tennessee.
fine. I meant
I was
Tennessee.
thinking
the statement stands.
It's fucking,
the same skill level.
It's
right?
the same issue. No, thank you. Not interested. It's the same reason. Like, okay, Cleveland. If Watson starts, Njoku should be a higher, quality tight end.
Agreed.
He's got a much better passer to him. But Cleveland is not. The rest of Cleveland didn't change, and Cleveland does not pass their tight ends. They run a lot, and then they pill around with the ball. So I still don't think that it's a similar issue. They don't use their tight ends for throwing. They use them like Indy does, which is to block for their star rushing back. Cleveland does it. Derrick Henry's going to continue to have 4 fucking tight ends block for him. They're not going to go out for routes. Don't fucking put those dudes in your roster. You're just wasting your time.
But we still got more moves. All right, I need you to consider. Still got some more moves. Hayden Hurst in Cincinnati. Uzomah's not there anymore. He's with the Jets.
I think that's an upgrade over Uzomah.
Yeah,
I agree.
I would take a tight end out of Cincy over any of those 3 teams I just listed, because Joe Burrow is more like Josh Allen, where he will throw to whoever's making plays at the time, whoever's got less coverage, as opposed to whoever he's comfortable with. And that it has to do with the quarterback, and also whoever their OC is. Whoever's making play calls is clearly not trying to force any one player, because Higgins and Boyd had big games last season too. Mixon had big games. Obviously, Chase had huge games.
And then you and I were watching several times. Uzomah would go off for 2-3 touchdowns. You're like, what is this? Yeah. And then disappear for 3 weeks, not even one grab. You know what I mean? So okay, so that's largely the list that everyone's kind of looking at. So I guess my next question is, who's a dark horse? We could have already talked about him, but who's someone that's lower down the list that's a dark horse for you that you like, where they are, and who they have thrown the ball?
For me, I'm going to take Tanyan, just as a Green Bay believer.
Sure.
they got to throw the ball around a little bit more. I mean, they're still going to rely on the run game with
That's true.
Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, but you know, Tanyan's top 15 for fantasy pros, but honestly, I think he's got something to prove this year. So we'll see how that goes.
I like Tanyan's skill set. I think he can do the job of an elite tight end. I really do. And I think Devontae Adams, him not being there, improves his case. So I like Tanyan there. I do. I like the pick. So what you got, Ray?
What?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
Ray.
Brock.
Go ahead.
What are you saying?
Oh, so actually, I saw in the rumor mill something about Darren Waller making his way to Green Bay. So if that were to happen, I think Darren Waller would have to be a top pick. But that's only a rumor. Only a rumor.
Tanyan's season there, you think that they would instantly drop him and put Waller in as number one?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or they might try to work both in there, you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, because Waller
gross.
doesn't block, man. That's a
I think that
Tanyan
would
special.
hurt. I think that would just hurt both of them, in my opinion, or hurt both their fantasy values anyway.
Yeah.
Shit. So according to a lot of cheeseheads that I talk to, and they genuinely, I think it's just a cope. They're all just trying to deal with the fact that Devontae Adams left. I mean this sincerely. I think that they're trying to lie to themselves that him leaving isn't a big deal, or it's not as big a deal as it really is. Because I've had several of them tell me the passing game is going to be just as good without him. Like it's not going to be any different. They keep telling themselves we're 7-0 without Devontae Adams, meaning they've won the last 7 games that he was out. That's such a fat fucking cope. He objectively was WR2 in the league last season. He's your number one receiver. The receiver core for that team is going to adjust, and if they don't pick up another tight end, I think that if Tanyan's recovery goes well, which I'm hearing it's not going.
He's a little bit behind schedule right now.
It's not going great, but if both those things happen, I think that his stock could go up just fine. I've seen Tanyan make great plays. There's no reason he couldn't be, a high scoring tight end other than he's just not getting the targets.
Hell yeah. Okay, so I got 2 figures that I think fall into my dark horse one. One is a super relative, as if it depends on the classification at the start of the season. But if Taysom Hill is in the tight end category, you have to pick him up.
That would be. I want to see
he throws, runs, and catches. Right when he did it, had a couple games. My second year of fantasy, a couple years back, I was playing Linderos, and I was screwed, man. He had all-stars all over his roster. And I saw Taysom Hill being listed as a tight end. Picked him up 30 points. Because he threw for 2 touchdowns and caught one. Like, I mean, you can't like the points were like cheating. How do we classify? Right, it was cheating. Well, first of all, I would say it's keeping your ear to the ground and staying informed in the league. Yeah. Okay.
He was listed as a tight end in fantasy, but he wasn't slotted as a tight end.
No, towards the end.
When you said he threw 2 touchdowns, I thought you meant in the same game they played 2 tight end sneaks. And he threw a fucking pass. I was like, who the fuck were they playing?
So they have this play that Sean Payton's a huge fan of, and it's a wildcat run. And what it is they take 10 of their beefiest cats and Taysom Hill in the back. They hike it to him, and he just runs. And they never can stop it because it's just their beefiest dudes out there. And so it's always like from like the 5-yard line. But it always works. I don't get it. It's not complicated. Anyway, that's a big what if. If the classification goes against him, which Dennis Allen, the head coach of the Saints, was like, we are more playing him as a tight end. If fantasy gives you that leeway, that's a top 5. That's a top 3 tight end. He's on the field so often that like I don't know.
What made Jalen Hurts a huge tight end. When Jalen Hurts was a tight end there, it made him so valuable because he was fucking dumping points out in that position that he had no right having.
Jalen Hurts, you mean the quarterback?
He's a quarterback now. But fucking okay. Remember, maybe I'm fucking misremembering, but I'm pretty sure when Wentz was there.
I think you might know what I'm talking about.
Is it not Jalen Hurts?
I don't think so.
I swear Jalen played tight end for Wentz before Wentz went to Indy, and Wentz was playing dog fuck
Jalen Hurts
football.
is the quarterback of the Eagles. Oh, I see. No. No. I know who you're talking
What
about.
fucking team do you think I'm talking about right now? I'm
That's
talking about 2 seasons ago. 2 seasons ago,
Exactly.
Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts were both in Philly. Remember, Carson Wentz didn't make his fucking career in Indy.
You know what?
Jalen Hurts was in the tight end in Philly. I watched him play tight end and then move from the tight end position in the same game and go quarterback because of how dog fuck Carson Wentz was playing.
He was probably the same thing that Taysom Hill is at that time. Because, yeah, you're right. Because Carson Wentz still had the job. That's true. I just don't remember that exact moment. But I
don't know how you don't remember that. That was peak fucking Philly football to me when the tight end, the guy that was slotted as the tight end for that game, comes over and starts playing quarterback because Wentz was just dog fucking all game.
In 2020?
Yeah, it'd have been his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. We'll circle back to that because I kind of have to remember this now because it sounds amazing. And then
I'm trying to find it.
I'm going to pick a guy that I know is going to be on many, many, many trap lists. I know it already.
Hold on. Before you jump ahead, Tanyan wasn't my dark horse. Mine was T.J. Hawkinson because I like him a lot. I just wish he had a better quarterback. I think he's incredibly talented. I just don't trust Jared Goff.
I actually do trust Jared Goff. I don't trust his O-line. I think he proved with LA that he can throw the ball just fine. It's just what you don't see is you don't see a winning, like, hardcore personality. You don't see a champion when you say Jared Goff. You see a dude that, like, yeah, he's on the team. He's doing fine. But you don't see, like, we won today because of Jared Goff. You just don't see that. And so sometimes people don't really like that mentality. But to me, like, I'm not going to ask him to throw 5 touchdowns, but I will ask him to throw 2. And I will ask, his running backs and his receivers to pick up some slack and make some plays. I think if you're playing within a confine, Goff is fine. And that's why Hawkinson, to me, is a good pick. I wouldn't call him a dark horse. I still think he's a top 5 tight end, but I understand after the last couple of years why that would still be accurate on both ways. Excuse me.
It's because he's a lion.
Yeah, that's really what it is. They tend to. He has a great game. He's overused. He's been thrown to 20 times a game, and now he's going to be out for 4 games because he's exhausted. Right? That's standard lion prac. Right? But I'm going to go back to Evan Ingram out in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Fresh start, new year, new me. I really don't think Lawrence is going to stretch the ball as much as people want him to, and that's where Evan Ingram comes in. Is that short to mid-game area. You're going to get I'm big on Etienne. I think Etienne's going to do fantastic. I have every intentions of drafting him. It'll be later, and if he falls out into free agency, I'm grabbing him. But barring that I can't, right, I don't think Ingram gets drafted on any board.
I don't think anyone should. I cannot believe
there is a league.
I think 2019 when we went to BLC, he was like TN1.
Yep. And was like, and it was like irrefuted, right? It was no one questioned it, and he did nothing the whole season. Yeah. I remember because a certain NCO I was playing at the time was adamant, this is my guy, and then he scored one game. He had like 25 points, and the rest had like 4.
Yeah,
it was just terrible,
non-existent last year and the year prior.
And I also think, too, that's the same thing that happens with Saquon. It's the same thing that happens with a lot of the guys in the Giants team. They shine too bright one at a time at the wrong time of the season. It's not a cohesive team because they keep throwing the ball 15 times to one guy in a game. You can't do that. It's not sustainable. No player can keep up with that. And I'm pretty sure Evan Ingram's the culprit of one of those as well. Now, he's going to have one chance. Evan Ingram has one chance, and that's this season in Jacksonville. Not asking for a mountain, but I am asking for about 5 touchdowns. And I think that's very doable for him.
That's why he falls into that is the second Jacksonville player that you said that you would put on your bench.
Yep.
I'm going to start thinking that you had a lobotomy.
Etienne's a starter. I'd play him in the starting role, depending on who I drafted, right? Because it's always the running backs always get taken. You
have a grain of salt with Etienne. You have no salt and no ground with
holding it.
Talking about Evan Ingram. You are a piece of shit.
Well, hey, dark horses. All right.
I don't know if that even qualifies. Why don't you
Watch
pick
the
me?
Jags
Pick
win their
me
division.
as your
Watch the
your
Jags.
fucking tight end. Raymond Stocks from Green River,
Raymond Stocks.
Wyoming, to go play for Buffalo as tight end. I think the fuck not.
Okay, so we'll get back towards the end of this right here, and we're gonna go to one of I think it's my favorite section we've done, and that is who is your trap tight end? Who is a tight end you see on rosters all the time? You can't take my layup. Now you got to go out there and find one of the other 30 guys that qualifies for this role.
Yeah.
Who's a trap tight end you see on a lot of rosters and just disappoints so often.
Let's hear it, Ray.
I mean, I was gonna say Kyle Pitts, but if you think he's a starter, that's just gonna start an argument. I think he's a trap.
Without a doubt, a starter.
There's no one else
Atlanta.
there.
Who else is going to play?
What does that matter? There's plenty of tight ends that don't have to fight for their position that you would be fucking retarded.
I'm
legitimately
just
borderline clinically retarded to start.
Because the
just
position
Derek
doesn't
on
get
this
used
that way.
like there's no other Falcon out there, man.
No.
There's tons of teams
They're
that have
fucked.
one tight end that's plays. So how is that relevant?
Uh,
He had a good game last season, and everyone was. I watched him disappear for his starting went from like 26% to 75%.
I cut him. I had him and cut him.
Yeah,
I know.
It's different when you have receivers to back up your tight end, but when
Calvin
all you have
Ridley
is
did
one
not
tight
play
end,
last season. If you're saying that his fantasy
Exactly.
goes, if
He played
you
a
are
couple
saying
games.
he played like 3, I know,
Yeah,
I
but-
had him, I fucking drafted him.
Yeah, he did.
If you are saying that Ridley being gone is going to increase Kyle Pitts' stock, you weren't paying attention last season. Calvin Pitts' stock is based off of how well Cordell Patterson plays, because Cordell Patterson is the dark horse on the Atlanta team, not Kyle Pitts. I don't personally have any issue with Kyle Pitts, but that organization has a lot of fucking issues to work through. I think a lot of people are like, wow, he was really good last year because of that one game where he shined really bright. And then they're going to draft him this year thinking it's going to be Evan Ingram all over again. The season that he got talked about a lot is going to lead to a season where a ton of people draft him, and it's going to be a complete waste of your fucking time. But it's okay because it's not like any other tight end is going to be better because his position fucking sucks for fantasy football. It's not good.
All right.
There you go.
All right. So Ray's opinions are always known. Here's what I will add. This is the only thing I'm adding to your trap part is the reason why you see so much hype and the reason why no one shuts the fuck up about this guy is this. When he was coming out of college in Florida, which he was super great at Florida, right? It's every deco you talk to would say, this guy's a nightmare, man. I have to double him every play. This guy's a nightmare. This guy's a nightmare. He's a super, super fast, large body.
He's athletic and he's big. He's fast for his size. I don't have an issue with him, for sure.
They don't shut the fuck up about it is because he just has the size, speed, and just the physique to be an absolute nightmare. Now, I think your analogy to Ingram is actually very accurate, in my opinion. Both are very athletic, and then Ingram's been in the league a couple more years. But that's actually a very, very close comparison in my book. But we'll see if we're wrong.
Well, I think where that comes from is Atlanta fans will hype fucking the moon if they think it'll win them football games. So I think they're just putting faith in the only player they have right now.
Hell yeah. What you got for me, Derek? Who's your trap tight end?
Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
like I said earlier, they just don't hit their tight ends enough. They're either gonna hit Cooper Kupp, or they'll run the ball. I mean, or option 3, Stafford's gonna throw an interception. So they're just not gonna hit Higbee enough just to make him useful for fantasy. Even if it's PPR, his targets aren't that great.
No, they just don't play that, like you were saying earlier, that traditional tight end powerhouse team. And I think there's so many options, and I think Allen Robinson going there makes it so much worse for Higbee.
It does.
I don't think a tight end see as a pass for the first 3 weeks of the game.
Tight ends are used for pressure relief on a lot of teams. They only get targets when everyone else is covered and they happen to get away from coverage. Higbee and Hunter Henry's another tight end that is a lot like that. You're only seeing them get those grabs when everyone else is covered, and somehow they found an opening. Like,
Yeah.
there have been other times where both them and another receiver is open. They might even be more open, have a little bit less coverage, but they're not going to throw to that tight end just because that's just not how this offense is run. Tyler Higbee, I don't know. On paper, he's fine, but yeah, I agree with you. I've seen a ton of people pick him up. Same with Hunter Henry, and it's just they never get what they want out of him.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, the one I'm going to pick, I picked this because he always goes high for the past couple of years anyway. He always goes high, and the draft capital you're spending on him, I have yet to see it really come to fruition, and that is T.J. Hawkinson. And that was before Goff. That was with Stafford too, right? He always goes in like the top 3 or 4, maybe 5 picks, right? It's always something that, because like you said, this position's rough, man. It's rough to pick a dude that's going to be consistent. It's almost impossible, really, because I would argue that even Mark Andrews has weeks where that dude is irrelevant, and then he'll jump off for 50 points, which is why tight ends suck so hard sometimes. Hawkinson, I don't think it's an improvement to have Goff there over Stafford. With Stafford there, he got closer to 1,000 yards than people think. He was at 730 yards, 6 touchdowns, 175 points, which is actually pretty darn good for a tight end, talking about a seasonal comparison, right? And then with Goff, only about 145. It's not like the drop-off is enough for me to say this guy's not even going to make a roster, because that's not true. He's going to make just about every roster in every league, unless you have 4 teams, whatever, right? Anyway, I just have seen it now year in, year out, where the money and the talk and everything in Detroit points to Hawkinson, and then DeAndre Swift takes all that thunder. And then, St. Brown takes all that thunder. And so I just not comfortable with the level of draft capital you're spending at that level, right, to pay off for that. I would spend it on a lot of other players than Hawkinson, and then hope I grab some decent 5 to 10 point guy on a roster than spending it on Hawkinson.
Yeah, I would say don't draft a tight end. I despise this position for fantasy. If your whole league is that smart, it's not something you should. Obviously, Mark Andrews and Kittle and those guys that are more used by their teams as receivers are going. Those guys aren't getting picked because they're good tight ends. Those guys are getting picked because of their receiving value.
Yes,
so it's different. Those when you draft Mark Andrews or Kelsey, you're not drafting a tight end. You're drafting a receiver that you're going to put in your tight end position. When you draft T.J. Hawkinson, you're drafting a tight end. You're drafting a dude that blocks and occasionally runs routes. And people draft fantasy tight ends but based off of real life tight end ability, and they don't equate. Good tight end in the NFL is not necessarily a good tight end in fantasy, because blocking is such an important part of tight end. If you take that into consideration with your draft, you're fucking yourself, because the fantasy app doesn't give a shit. None of that blocking that they're going to do is going to amount to a damn thing. They don't have a formula yet to account for yards gained because of their block. So until that becomes
pancakes,
a thing,
pancakes or clotheslined events. It's just not a stat that they track. So, and then the other guy that I was going to mention just super, super briefly, and this is another guy that one, I would never pick a Chicago tight end. I would never pick one. I will say that Jimmy Graham is not there anymore.
Yeah.
But Cole Kmet is. And the reason Cole Kmet's in the top 20 on a lot of the lists is because he has good receiving hands. He does. He's a good big body with good speed. The problem is Justin Fields is running for his life every play. And there's no way. It'd be like trusting an Eagles receiver last year. It's not that he doesn't want to, guys. It's that he literally is getting hit every other play and has to roll out and make a play. I think the same thing with Justin Fields. I think if you pick really any Chicago player, I wouldn't. Even David Montgomery is a little iffy for me. And I always swing and miss on that one, right? Because people, they get him, and he does just fine. And then he'll put up 20, 30 points because he's the guy there. I don't play Chicago players. Not receivers, not tight ends, not running backs. Certainly not quarterbacks. My whole thing with Cole Kmet being in the top 40 is, to me, a little absurd. And that's because Justin Fields had the lowest QBR of all those guys drafted in that draft stock. where you had Zach Wilson had a better QBR. Just put that in perspective, right? The guy who was literally broken for 3 games because he got hit so much had a better QBR, right? So I think Cole Kmet's a poison pill that you're going to swallow if you put him on your roster, certainly with a draft pick. If you pick up on a draft, no way. There's just no chance. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Fields. That man got hit way too much.
Yeah, and there were certainly plays of brilliance, just like a lot of those guys where he's under pressure, rolling out, throws a dime, 30 yards, corner of the end zone. It's beautiful. But you don't want to have to make that play. You want to be a lot more comfortable than that, right?
Yeah.
So, anybody got anything else you want to add to the tight ends? I know, Ray, you've had a lot of fun this week.
Come on, buddy. Watch half your games this season come down to you either winning or losing by a tight end.
Almost every game I lost this
season
season could have been won by a fucking tight end. I think I only got blown out by a couple times, like 1 or 2 times.
And one of them was Mark Andrews.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think like one of his 50-point games. Yep. You know, no tight end I could have put in would have made a difference. And so that's another thing. When you're talking about in positions in running back, even if you're playing against Derrick Henry, because you have 2 running backs, there is a chance that you're going to be able to match his points with your 2 running backs, depending on who your opponent has as their second running back, right? Tight end, when you're matching up positions, you're like, I beat him in QB, I beat him at receiver, I beat him at running back. But it's close. Tight end is the only position that almost guaranteed they're going to blow you out of the water, just depending on who they have. Like, it's rarely close because nobody's holding extra tight ends on their bench.
No.
The only time anyone outside of the top 10 gets put onto a team is during bye weeks. That's it.
Bye weeks, injuries, or the past couple of years.
Well, yeah, obviously injuries. COVID.
Right.
Yeah. Or
it affected
league
it, right?
rules.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, fellas. Well, I think if you guys that got nothing else, Derek, anything else?
I think that about wraps it for me.
I cannot believe we talked for an hour about this fucking shit position. That's unreal.
All right. Before he goes off, y'all join us next week. Thank you so much. We'll get the topic out. We should be talking more about defensive and coaching and potential better positions for leagues and players in certain conferences and stuff. But we'll get to that next week, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
And stay off my airplane.